So I just got done watching the Democratic National debate that wasn't even solely hosted by CNN. Univision, Mexican television, a station based in Mexico, a station that broadcasts largely in Mexico, although I know they broadcast largely in the United States too. But they even had a moderator from Mexico, a non-U.S. citizen, moderating a presidential debate for the potential future leader of this country. Now, I'm going to leave that one alone. I'm going to touch on some of the debate specifics. Basically, what I took away from this debate was that Joe Biden wears his suit a lot better than Bernie Sanders does. Much in the same way, everyone wears their suit a lot better than Donald Trump does. But also that Joe Biden seemed to have a record of voting as a U.S. congressman a lot better than that of Bernie Sanders, but also, as his record as the Vice President of the United States. A couple of things that really kind of got to me about their back and forth. And this is why Trump is going to win the White House in 2020, but I'll get back to that too. Bernie Sanders basically seems to think that without generating any amount of revenue, independent of his plans, that free health care, right for all Americans. End of story, period. We're not going to generate anything outside of that. All Americans deserve free health care. And fossil fuels are the devil, mama. They're the devil. Vicky Valancourt, in this analogy, is fossil fuels. Now, while we do need to come up with a little bit better way to consume energy in this country, it doesn't need to be immediate, right now, and absolute. Every single electric charging station that you see for these quote-unquote green cars is powered by diesel fuel, which comes from, that's right, you guessed it, fossil fuels. You will literally see people who can't stop at electric charging stations stopping alongside of the road with their portable charging stations. Their portable charging stations mostly being generators with a little electrical plug in there that are powered by diesel fuel. It seems a little bit oxymoronic and redundant all at the same time. Joe Biden touched on a point that really kind of threw me off, and this is a point where I agree with Bernie the Muppet, that while Bernie was all for suing tobacco companies for diseases that you get from smoking, and all for suing pharmaceutical companies for addiction, he voted against suing gun companies. Now, I am a staunch Second Amendment supporter, but I also recognize reality. And the reality of it is that anyone under the age of 45 should not be allowed to sue tobacco companies. Tobacco companies have not been allowed to advertise on television for cigarette commercials. Joe Cool, Joe Camel, whatever the hell it is, Marlboro Man, they haven't been on TV since the 70s, okay? And if you were old enough to smoke back in the 70s, that means you're way too old now to be 45 years old. Guns, however, Smith & Wesson, Sig Sauer, Remington, none of those companies advertise on television, and they don't advertise in mainstream publications. There's not a single gun maker out there that's going to tell you that their gun is better because it shoots up a school faster. There are many pharmaceutical companies, however, that will jockey for position as to which drug will actually make you get over your psoriatic arthritis or, plaque psoriasis or your anal seepage better than the other guy. And then they speak so fast and so, vehemently about the side effects. Could cause AIDS, cancer, anal seepage, and they say it like an auctioneer trying to offload a shitty car that you don't even have time to listen to it. And then the fine print at the bottom of the page for every pharmaceutical ad is so, you know, minute that only probably an 18-year-old with, 20/20 vision who's crept up on the TV kind of like this can read it. And they got to be speed readers to do it. It's fucking ridiculous. I don't agree with Biden's stance on it about Bernie Sanders. Well, you voted against being able to sue gun makers. Look, first of all, the Second Amendment is the only amendment that prohibits infringement of that right, period. Now you'll have liberals out there say, well, you're only allowed to have musket loaders. The problem is if that liberal happens to be female, then she's not even allowed to speak according to the Constitution or the Bill of Rights, which is not all 27 of them, but, the first 12, because they weren't allowed to vote. They weren't really allowed to speak or do anything else in the household except make babies and dinner. Kind of it. Bernie Sanders praised China. In South Carolina, he praised Castro. And in this debate, he point blank said that China is an authoritarian system. But economically, they've grown so much over the last 40 years. Basically saying that if you're an authoritarian system, you have the potential to grow exponentially over 40 years. So let me go ahead and put it like this. I might have 40 years left on this earth. I know my children have 40 years left on this earth. And I know that Bernie Sanders probably doesn't have another 30 years left on this earth. But he seems to think that his economic policies and his socialist views will boom the American economy, when in fact he has absolutely no answer for the revenue generation to pay for the programs that he has proposed. The Democrats believe in equality, at least that's their claim. They believe in equality. And yeah, I'm switching gears here a little bit, but when touched upon women's rights, when touched upon, things they're going to do for women both physically and economically, Bernie Sanders touched on, and I believe, Bernie Sanders touched on how women make 80 cents on the dollar to men and minority women make 50 cents on the dollar to men. I'm going to go ahead and let you know. Income disparity is not due to sexism or racism. If an hourly wage is offered by a job, it's the same hourly wage no matter your gender, your race, any of that. If you are going to vie for a salary job where you submit a resume and meet with the CEO of said company, and you are paid less than, say, a male counterpart who was hired the same day you were, that is because you failed to negotiate the salary that other individual did. It is illegal in this country to pay people differently based upon gender, religion, race, or any other form of discriminatory practice. It has nothing to do with anything more than your own failure to negotiate a better rate. So Bernie Sanders is way off in that. But you know what he did do? He did show his ass a little bit when it came to sexism, as the social view of America pertains to domestic violence and custody of children. At no point in time did he touch on anything that would benefit single fathers or men who were victims of domestic violence or domestic abuse from women. In fact, neither candidate did. And that's the problem. Joe Biden may look more presidential, but he's just as full of shit as Bernie Sanders. That's all I pretty much took away from this debate. However, if I were a Democrat, I would say that Joe Biden's a little bit better qualified to lead this country than Bernie Sanders. Actually, a lot bit. I think I'd rather have somebody like him than a Muppet who sits in the balcony and all day about a Muppet performance. every day of the week. However, my problem is that I pretty much think almost anybody is better than Donald Trump, because he's he is the sack of shit that Bernie Sanders looks like in that horribly fitted suit that he wears. So there's that. It's a problem. And now we talk about the coronavirus. It's very surprising to me that neither one of these two blamed the President of the United States for the coronavirus that started in Wuhan, China, etc., and so forth. This virus is going to bankrupt more people than it kills, and neither side of the spectrum is actually acknowledging that. Neither of them has an answer for it, and nobody's talking about it, at least in the debates, politically. What is being talked about is the global pandemic that kills 0.0000009% of the population, total population of the planet, 7.8 billion people, and only kills about 0.00004% of the people it infects. My biggest fear right now is that this whole thing's going to keep going on. It's going to keep upticking because you fucking morons are buying toilet paper instead of just exercising common hygiene, which your parents need to be beaten in the face with a coal shovel for not teaching you to wash your fucking hands and wash your ass. But my biggest fear is that the uptick is going to continue and that eventually martial law will be instituted, which suspends all elections, which means Donald Trump stays in power. And it basically means the troops are patrolling the streets, telling you when you can come out, when you can go in, when you can take a shit, when you can eat, what you can eat, how much of it you can purchase. And it suspends our republic. And let me say that again. It suspends our republic, which is exactly what this fucking country is. It is not a democracy. It is a constitutional republic. And for you retards out there that don't understand that, maybe you should look it up. I have sitting next to me a copy of our Constitution. And I've actually read it several times, and I know that none of you have. See, it's right here. Constitution of the United States. Hell, it even includes the Declaration of Independence. And all these nifty little, amendments. Amendment 20. Yeah, it's not going to be applicable. Neither is Amendment 19, Amendment 18, none of that. None of you guys probably even know what they say. Probably don't even know what Amendment 13 says. And that's the interesting part about it. But I will tell you this, that Amendment 1 says that Congress will make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people to peaceably assemble and petition the government for a redress of grievances. Which means you can gather anywhere, anytime, and for any purpose, as long as it's peaceful, to petition the government for a redress of grievances, like, I don't know, being locked in your fucking house. Because they think that this quote-unquote global pandemic, which is gearing up to be no better or worse than the H1N1 virus or the actual flu. But back to the debate, and you've got old Joe Biden contradicting himself all the time when we talk about weapons. The only amendment that does not, in fact, specify anything, in fact, it broadly denies the government's right to prohibit something. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Look it up, read it, repeat it. Shall not be infringed. Under any circumstance. It doesn't say unless. Matter of fact, I'll show it to you. It's right there. Take a peek. Fucking morons. No soldier shall in time of peace be quartered in any house without the consent of the owner, nor in time of war, but in a manner to be prescribed by law. Here's the thing. Your house is your property line. Troops can't camp out in your parking spots, can't camp out in your backyard. And troops is also defined as the police officers, those statist bootlicking SS Gestapo cocksuckers that are going to be enforcing these laws when they do finally try to take you home, or keep you home, I should say. Now, the federal government can shut down all the federal buildings they want to. The state government can shut down all the state facilities they want to. But they're going to try to creep in on individual businesses as they have allegedly done in Ohio and probably several other places. Private business. They're trying to shut these places down because they don't want people leaving their house. But why don't they want them leaving their house? In the state of West Virginia, nobody has even caught the coronavirus. In the communist wealth of Virginia, they have what's called presumptive positive cases. People haven't even been tested yet. But they're shutting down schools and this and that left and right. Because after all, that's what's best for the people. So I'm going to say this. For all of the moms and the dads out there that claim they know what's best for their family because they know their family, if you agree with any amount of this shit the government's piling upon you, you're a moron too. And I hope you catch the coronavirus because you know what's best for your family, but the government's telling you what to do with it and you're agreeing with it. Bottom line is, there's not that many people that travel outside the country in these rural areas that are going to catch it to begin with. Presumptive positive is basically a presumption of someone being positive. Well, whatever happened to innocent until proven guilty? Which does apply here if you think about it, break it down. We presume that you're positive because you came into contact with someone who had a dry cough. Hey, I smoke. I dry cough all the time. I don't have it. Last thing I'm going to touch on is this whole gathering thing. They're saying that the government is ordering that no gatherings of 100 plus people will take place. They cannot do that. And again, I'm going to go right back to it. Pay attention. The right of the people to peaceably assemble and petition the government for a redress of grievances. It leaves no numerical indication of how many people can be there. Therefore, you could protest by going down to your local pub and getting fucked up with 100 of your friends. They cannot legally order you to do that. They cannot legally enforce that order. Period. Stop buying into the rhetoric. Stop buying into the panic. And for the love of God, you don't have to wipe your ass 5 billion times in the next 30 days. So stop buying toilet paper 240 rolls at a time, you stupid sons of bitches. And daughters of bitches. And children of bitches and grandchildren of bitches. Stop. Ask yourself this one question. What is this coronavirus a distraction from? What are they trying to perpetuate behind your back while distracting you with all this bullshit? How many people do you personally know actually have the coronavirus, suffered greatly from the coronavirus, and possibly succumbed to the coronavirus? Because thus far, out of my several inquiries, everybody says, well, I know someone who lives in an area where there's all these cases. No. How many people do you personally know have been afflicted with this virus personally? And I'll bet you if you ask all of your friends, their answer will be the same as everyone I've talked to. And the answer is none. It's a conspiracy, and it is in fact ridiculous. What are they hiding? There hasn't been this great farce perpetuated upon the American people since the Warren Commission.